The first rays of sunlight pierce through the canopy of ancient conifers, casting long shadows across the misty river valley. It is dawn in what will one day be called Montana, 75 million years before the first human cities will rise. The air is thick with moisture, carrying the scent of cycad pollen and decomposing vegetation. In this primordial landscape, a small band of mammals is about to attempt something extraordinary, something desperate, something that could mean the difference between survival and extinction for their entire clan. They are not impressive creatures by any measure. 20 members of a species that paleontologists will eventually name Alphadon, each no larger than a modern house cat, with dark fur adapted for nocturnal activity and small, intelligent eyes that betray a cunning beyond their modest brain capacity. For 3 days, they have eaten nothing but insects and the occasional lizard. Their young, back in the burrow, are starving. The clan's survival depends on what happens in the next 12 hours. But what they are planning is not a simple hunt. They are not stalking prey they can overpower through numbers or speed. No, what lies ahead in that river valley is something far more dangerous, far more calculated. They are going to steal from a creature that weighs more than all of them combined by a factor of thousands. They are going to take what a mother will defend with every ounce of her massive body. They are going to raid the nesting ground of a Parasaurolophus. The scout, a battle-scarred female the others follow instinctively, crouches on a limestone outcrop overlooking the valley. Her whiskers twitch as she processes the complex sensory information flooding her brain. Below, perhaps 300 meters away, she can see the nesting site. It is exactly where they had observed it 5 days ago, during their initial surveillance. The massive female Parasaurolophus, a 9-meter-long hadrosaur with a distinctive backward-curving cranial crest, has been guarding her clutch with unwavering devotion. The scout has been watching this particular female for weeks now, learning her patterns, understanding her behaviors. This is not the first nesting season she has observed, not the first time her clan has considered such a raid, but conditions have never been quite right before. The usual food sources have failed this year. An early frost killed many of the flowering plants that attracted the insects they normally fed upon. The lizards have moved to higher ground. The clan is desperate. She makes a series of soft, chirping sounds, barely audible above the dawn chorus of pterosaurs calling from the cliffsides. The other members of the raiding party move closer, forming a loose semicircle behind her. These are not the entire clan, just the best, the strongest, the most experienced. 12 adults, each having survived at least 3 breeding seasons, each bearing the scars of previous encounters with the megafauna that dominate this world. The second in command, a younger male with a torn ear, positions himself next to the scout. He has questions in his eyes, communicated through subtle body language that requires no vocalization. The scout responds with a complex series of gestures, pointing with her snout toward various features of the landscape below. The nesting site itself is a marvel of instinctive engineering. The Parasaurolophus female has chosen a location on slightly elevated ground, protected on 3 sides by dense vegetation, but with clear sightlines toward the river. The nest is a massive mound of rotting vegetation, perhaps 3 meters in diameter and half a meter high. The decomposing plant matter generates heat, keeping the eggs at a constant temperature even during the cool. Buried within that mound are approximately 20 eggs, each the size of a small melon, containing developing embryos that represent the future of their species. But it is not the eggs themselves that make this reconnaissance so crucial. It is understanding the mother's defensive patterns, her blind spots, her response times, her physical limitations. Over the past 3 hours, since the very first light began to creep over the eastern mountains, the scout has been compiling this information with an attention to detail that speaks to millions of years of evolutionary pressure favoring intelligence and planning. The mother Parasaurolophus is formidable. At 9 meters in length and weighing perhaps 3 tons, she is a walking fortress of muscle and determination. Her powerful hind legs can generate devastating kicks that would pulverize any of the raiders instantly. Her tail, thick and muscular, can sweep an area of several meters, crushing anything caught in its arc. Even her seemingly gentle duck-like bill conceals powerful jaw muscles capable of delivering bone-breaking bites. But she has weaknesses. Every creature does. The scout has noticed that the mother's vision, while adequate, is not exceptional in low-light conditions. The angle of her eyes, positioned on the sides of her head, creates significant blind spots directly in front of her snout and directly behind her tail. She relies heavily on sound, using her distinctive crest as a resonating chamber to produce low-frequency calls that can travel for kilometers. But this same sensitivity makes her vulnerable to auditory distractions. More importantly, the scout has observed patterns in the mother's behavior. Every 40 to 50 minutes, she rises from her position beside the nest and makes a circuit of the perimeter, checking the surrounding vegetation for potential threats. During these patrols, which last approximately 5 to 7 minutes, the nest is technically unguarded, though she never moves more than 20 meters away. Additionally, the mother feeds periodically, using her bill to strip leaves from nearby ferns and horsetails. These feeding sessions create brief windows of opportunity when her attention is divided. The sun continues its inexorable climb above the horizon. The mist begins to burn off the river valley, revealing more details of the terrain the raiders will need to navigate. The scout studies 3 possible approach routes, mentally calculating the risks and advantages of each. The first route would take them along the riverbank itself, using the dense stand of primitive shrubs and ferns as cover. This offers excellent concealment, but requires crossing an open mud flat approximately 15 meters wide. If they are detected during that crossing, there is no escape route except back the way they came. The second route approaches from the higher ground to the west, using a series of fallen logs and rock formations as cover. This path keeps them elevated and offers multiple escape routes, but it requires crossing through territory currently occupied by a pair of smaller theropod dinosaurs, possibly Troodon, whose own predatory instincts might cause them to attack the raiders on sight. The third route is the most circuitous, looping around to approach the nest from the south, using a dry stream bed as a natural trench. This offers the best concealment and multiple contingency paths, but it is also the longest, requiring nearly an hour of careful movement through territory that must be covered in complete silence. The scout considers all 3 options, then makes her decision. They will use the third route for the initial approach, positioning themselves in the dry stream bed. This will allow them to observe the mother's morning routine and make final adjustments to their plan. The actual raid will not begin until they have confirmation of her behavioral patterns. She communicates this decision to the group through a combination of scent marking, specific postures, and soft vocalizations. There is no debate, no disagreement. In moments of life and death stakes, the clan operates with a unity of purpose that would seem almost militaristic to future human observers. The raiding party begins its descent from the limestone outcrop. They move single file, with the scout leading and the second in command bringing up the rear. Each member places their paws carefully, testing ground before committing their weight, moving through the undergrowth with a silence born of absolute necessity. In this world, noise equals death. A snapped twig could alert not just the Parasaurolophus mother, but any number of other predators who would view these small mammals as nothing more than convenient snacks. As they descend into the valley, the environment changes dramatically. The sparse vegetation of the higher ground gives way to dense, prehistoric jungle. Giant ferns tower overhead, their fronds creating a canopy that filters the strengthening sunlight into shifting patterns of light and shadow. Horsetails, some reaching heights of 6 to 7 meters, form impenetrable walls of vegetation. The ground is soft, covered in layers of decomposing plant matter that releases methane and other gases with each footfall. The scout pauses every few meters, raising her snout to test the air. Her sense of smell is extraordinary, capable of detecting the chemical signatures of danger from hundreds of meters away. She can smell the Parasaurolophus mother, a complex aroma of reptilian musk, rotting vegetation from the nest, and the subtle hormonal markers of a female in protective. But she also detects other scents that require navigation. The territorial markings of a crocodilian species near the river. The droppings of a herd of ceratopsians that passed through recently. The blood of some unfortunate creature that became someone else's breakfast earlier this morning. After 40 minutes of painstaking movement, the raiding party reaches the dry stream bed. It is perfect for their purposes. A natural depression carved by ancient floods, now reduced to a sandy channel bordered by rocks and overhanging vegetation. The bed is approximately 2 meters wide and provides a clear path toward the nesting site, while keeping them below the sight line of most larger animals. The scout leads them along this natural trench for another 100 meters until they reach a position she had identified during previous observations. Here, a fallen cycad trunk creates a natural blind, offering both concealment and an elevated vantage point. From this position, they are approximately 50 meters from the nest itself, close enough to observe details, far enough to remain undetected if they maintain discipline. The entire raiding party settles into position. This is not comfortable. The sun is climbing higher, and with it comes the oppressive heat that characterizes this period in Earth's history. The atmospheric oxygen content is higher than it will be in the human era, making breathing feel slightly intoxicating, but also contributing to the enormous size of the insects that buzz through the air. One such insect, a dragonfly with a wingspan of nearly half a meter, hovers briefly over the raiders before continuing on its hunting flight. From their concealed position, they can now observe the Parasaurolophus mother in detail. She is magnificent, an apex of hadrosaur evolution. Her body is primarily green, with brown mottling along her flanks, a coloration pattern that paleontologists will never be able to determine from fossils alone. The famous crest, extending back from her skull, is more elaborate than fossilized remains will suggest, with subtle color variations and possibly even the remnants of seasonal display structures. She sits beside her nest in a posture of eternal vigilance, her large eyes constantly scanning the perimeter. Periodically, she lowers her massive head to gently touch the nest mound with her snout, checking the temperature, ensuring the eggs remain at optimal incubation conditions. This maternal behavior represents one of the most sophisticated evolutionary developments of the dinosaur lineage, a level of parental care that rivals anything modern reptiles or birds will demonstrate. The scout watches and learns. She notes that the mother's patrol pattern is indeed consistent with what she observed during previous reconnaissance. Approximately every 45 minutes, the great hadrosaur rises to her feet with a soft grunt of effort, stretches her powerful hind legs, and begins a slow circuit of the nesting area. During these patrols, she pauses frequently to use her crest to produce low-frequency calls, listening for responses that might indicate other members of her species in the area or potential threats approaching. But the scout also notices something new, something that changes the calculus of the raid significantly. The mother is beginning to show signs of exhaustion. This is day number 43 of her nest vigil, a period during which she has eaten minimally and slept in brief, fitful intervals. Her movements are slightly slower than they were a week ago. Her head droops periodically, and there are moments when her eyes half close for several seconds at a time. This exhaustion is both an opportunity and a danger. An exhausted mother might be slower to respond to a threat, but she might also be more unpredictable, more prone to explosive defensive reactions when she does detect intruders. The sun continues its climb toward its zenith. Hour 1 of the raid becomes Hour 2, then Hour 3. The raiders remain motionless, fighting their own instincts to move, to hunt, to return to the safety of their burrow. This is the patience that separates successful predators from dead ones. The ability to suppress immediate gratification in favor of strategic advantage. During the third hour, something happens that makes the entire raiding party tense. A lone male Parasaurolophus approaches from the north, calling out with his own distinctive crest resonance. This is potentially catastrophic. If a male establishes himself near the nesting site, the dynamics change completely. 2 adults guarding the nest would make the raid impossible. The mother rises to her feet, clearly agitated. She moves toward the approaching male, positioning herself between him and the nest. What follows is a complex interaction of vocalizations and posture that represents hadrosaur social dynamics in action. The male is not aggressive, but neither is he deterred. He has likely traveled from kilometers away, drawn by the mother's calls, operating on instincts related to breeding territory and mate guarding. The confrontation lasts nearly 20 minutes, during which the raiders remain frozen in position. Discovery now would mean not just failure, but likely death, caught between 2 massive dinosaurs in an active confrontation. But finally, the mother's aggressive posturing succeeds. The male retreats, calling out what sounds almost like a complaint as he disappears back into the forest. The mother returns to her nest, but the encounter has left her visibly more alert, more agitated. She does not settle back into her resting position immediately, but remains standing for another 15 minutes, her head swiveling constantly, checking every shadow, every movement in the surrounding vegetation. The scout processes this development. The encounter has introduced a variable they had not fully. Other Parasaurolophus in the area means potential complications, additional threats, the possibility of being caught between multiple dinosaurs during the actual raid. But it also confirms something important. The mother is alone, defensive, exhausted, and committed to this location. She will not abandon her nest, even under significant pressure. As the third hour concludes and the sun reaches its mid-morning position, The scout makes a series of decisions that will determine the course of the next 9 hours. She has seen enough. The behavioral patterns are consistent. The mother's exhaustion is genuine. The approach routes are viable. The timing windows exist. The raid will proceed. She turns to the second-in-command and the other senior members of the raiding party. Through silent communication, she begins to outline the plan in detail. The group will split into 3 teams, each with specific roles. The distraction team will create auditory and visual diversions designed to exploit the mother's sensory processing limitations. The acquisition team will be responsible for the actual egg theft, working with speed and coordination to extract eggs from the nest during the precious few seconds when the mother's attention is diverted. The support team will maintain observation positions, ready to provide warnings and create additional diversions if necessary. But all of this will wait. The actual raid will not begin for several more hours. They need the mother to settle into her midday routine, to let her guard down as much as a protective parent ever can. They need the sun to be at a specific angle, creating shadows and thermal patterns that will work to their advantage. The reconnaissance phase is complete. Now comes the waiting, the preparation, the mental rehearsal of every movement, every contingency, every possible outcome. In their small mammalian brains, neural pathways are being reinforced. Scenarios are being played out. Survival calculations are being made with a sophistication that their physical size would seem to contradict. The sun climbs higher. The heat becomes oppressive. The valley fills with the sounds of the Cretaceous day, the distant calls of other hadrosaurs, the buzzing of enormous insects, the splash of something large entering the river, the rustle of predators moving through undergrowth. And 12 small mammals wait, watching, planning, preparing for the most dangerous 12 hours of their lives. The egg raid is about to begin. Morning. The distraction, hours 4 to 6. The sun has climbed to its mid-morning position, transforming the river valley into a cauldron of heat and humidity. It is now hour 4 of the 12-hour mission, and the dynamics are about to shift from patient observation to active engagement. The Parasaurolophus mother has settled into what appears to be a brief resting period, her massive body lowered beside the nest, her eyes half closed in a state that is neither true sleep nor full alertness. This is the evolutionary compromise of a solitary nesting parent. Rest when possible, but never truly surrender to unconsciousness. The scout has made her final preparations. During the past 30 minutes, while the other raiders remained in their concealed position, she conducted one last reconnaissance circuit, moving with ghost-like silence through the undergrowth to confirm the positions of potential threats and opportunities. She found no other large predators in the immediate vicinity, though the scent markers suggest a Dromaeosaurus pack passed through this area sometime in the past 6 hours. More importantly, she identified 3 specific locations that will serve as distraction points, each chosen for its strategic value in manipulating the mother's attention and defensive response. Now, back with the raiding party, she communicates the plan through a complex series of subtle gestures and chemical signals. The group has already divided itself into the 3 predetermined teams. But now comes the crucial part, the precise choreography of who does what, when, and how. The distraction team consists of 4 individuals, including the second-in-command with the torn ear. Their task is perhaps the most dangerous of all. They must create disturbances significant enough to trigger the mother's defensive instincts and draw her attention away from the nest, but not so threatening that she refuses to leave the immediate vicinity of her eggs. This requires an almost preternatural understanding of hadrosaur psychology, reading the subtle cues of her body language, knowing exactly how far to push before retreat becomes necessary. The acquisition team is composed of 5 raiders, all chosen for their speed and coordination. These are the egg thieves themselves, the ones who will actually enter the nest during the precious windows of opportunity created by the distraction team. Their movements will need to be perfectly synchronized, each individual knowing exactly which egg to target, which route to use for approach and retreat, how to handle the awkward weight of an egg that is, relative to their body size, absolutely enormous. The remaining 3, including the scout herself, form the support and observation team. They will maintain elevated positions with clear sight lines to the entire operational area, serving as lookouts for unexpected threats and coordinators of the overall mission. The scout will use a series of specific vocalizations, each with a distinct meaning, to direct the other team's actions in real time. The plan is elegant in its simplicity, but devilishly complex in its execution. The distraction team will create a series of escalating disturbances at carefully chosen locations around the perimeter of the nesting area. The first disturbance will be subtle, designed merely to make the mother alert and attentive. The second will be more pronounced, triggering her patrol instinct and drawing her several meters from the nest. The third, if necessary, will be designed to create genuine alarm, potentially causing her to move as far as 15 to 20 meters from her eggs in pursuit of what she perceives as a significant threat. During each of these windows, when the mother's attention is focused elsewhere and her body is positioned away from the nest, the acquisition team will move in, extract a single egg, and retreat to a predetermined cache point. The beauty of this approach is its gradualism. They are not attempting to steal all 20 eggs in a single brazen raid. Instead, they will take them one at a time, maybe 2 if the opportunity presents itself, over the course of several hours. By the time the mother realizes eggs are missing, the raiders will have secured multiple eggs and established escape routes. Hour 4 begins with the first disturbance. The second in command positions himself at Distraction Point Alpha, a location approximately 30 meters from the nest at the edge of the dense fern thicket. He has chosen this spot because it offers both good cover for rapid retreat and a clear sight line to the mother. From his vantage point, he can see her resting beside the nest, her breathing slow and rhythmic, her guard lowered to its minimum viable level. He begins with sound. Not a loud noise, but something specific. Something that will register as potentially threatening without causing immediate panic. He scrapes his claws against the bark of a primitive conifer, creating a rhythmic scratching sound. In the Cretaceous soundscape, this is similar to what might be produced by a small predator marking territory, or a rival hadrosaur investigating the area. The effect is immediate. The mother's eyes snap fully. Her head rises, the distinctive crest tilting as she orients toward the sound source. Her body language shifts from rest to alert in the span of 2 seconds. She does not rise to her feet yet, but her muscles are clearly tensing, preparing for potential action. The second in command scratches again, this time adding a soft vocalization, a chattering sound that could be mistaken for aggressive communication between small predators. The mother's response escalates. She rises to her feet with surprising speed for a creature of her size, her powerful hind legs lifting her 3-ton bulk with practiced ease. She faces toward the sound source, her body positioned between the potential threat and her nest. This is exactly what the raiders need. The mother is alert, focused, and critically, she is now facing away from the nest with her attention locked on the fern thicket. The scout, watching from her elevated position, makes a soft clicking sound, barely audible even to the other raiders, but perfectly understood. It is the signal for Phase 1 of the acquisition. 2 members of the acquisition team begin their approach. They move from their concealed position in the dry stream bed, crossing the intervening ground in a low, rapid scuttle that keeps them below the mother's sight line. They have perhaps 30 seconds before the mother either investigates the disturbance more thoroughly or returns to her nest. Every second counts. They reach the nest mound and immediately encounter their first challenge. The mound is constructed of densely packed vegetation in various states of decomposition. The outer layer is relatively dry, but beneath is a mass of rotting plant matter generating considerable heat through bacterial action. The eggs are buried within this matrix, positioned to take advantage of the heat while remaining protected from direct sunlight and predators. The first raider begins digging frantically with her front paws, pushing aside layers of vegetation. The smell is overwhelming, a thick miasma of decay and fermentation that would make any creature with a less robust olfactory system physically ill. But she pushes through, driven by hunger and the knowledge that her own offspring are starving. Within 15 seconds, she feels it, the hard, smooth surface of an egg. Parasaurolophus eggs are elongated, roughly 25 centimeters in length and 12 centimeters in diameter at their widest point. The shell is thick, designed to support the weight of the vegetation mound and protect the developing embryo from temperature fluctuations and microbial invasion. For a mammal the size of a house cat, this is an absurdly large object to attempt to move. But evolution has prepared them for this challenge. The raider's jaw structure, while seemingly delicate, can exert impressive force relative to her body size. She positions herself to get leverage, grips the egg carefully with her teeth, and begins to extract it from the vegetation matrix. The second raider assists, using her paws to clear additional material and create a path for removal. Meanwhile, at distraction point Alpha, the situation is developing in a way that requires immediate adjustment. The mother Parasaurolophus has not simply oriented toward the sound source. She is beginning to move toward it, her massive feet creating small tremors with each step, her head lowered in a posture that suggests she is prepared to charge if necessary. The second in command must make a split-second decision. If he retreats now, the mother might return to the nest before the acquisition team has completed the egg extraction. If he maintains his position and allows her to get too close, he risks being trampled or bitten. He chooses a middle path. He moves laterally, creating a new sound signature from a slightly different location, approximately 10 meters to the right of his original position. This works perfectly. The mother, already committed to investigating the disturbance, adjusts her trajectory to follow the new sound source. She is now 15 meters from her nest, the farthest she has moved since the raiders began their observation. Her attention is completely focused on identifying and neutralizing the potential threat. At the nest, the acquisition team has successfully extracted the first egg. It is a thing of surprising beauty, the shell displaying subtle color variations, and a texture that speaks to millions of years of evolutionary refinement. But there is no time for appreciation. The raider gripping the egg begins her retreat, moving as quickly as the awkward burden allows, heading toward the first cache point established during the planning phase. The second raider remains at the nest for a few seconds longer, carefully replacing some of the vegetation to disguise the disturbance. This is crucial. If the mother returns and immediately notices that the nest has been disturbed, her defensive responses will escalate dramatically. By carefully camouflaging the theft, the raiders buy themselves additional time for subsequent raids. The scout watches the entire sequence unfold with an intensity that would seem almost human in its focused awareness. She tracks the mother's position, the acquisition team's progress, the second-in-command's movements, all simultaneously. Her brain is processing information at the absolute limits of its cognitive capacity, running scenarios, calculating probabilities, preparing contingency responses. The first egg is cached. 1 down, 19 to go. But the raiders know they cannot possibly take all 20. The goal is not to empty the nest, but to secure enough eggs to feed the clan for several days, perhaps 6 to 8 eggs total. Each successful theft increases the risk of discovery, but each egg represents survival for hungry offspring waiting in the burrow. Hour 4 transitions into hour. The mother, having found no actual threat at the location of the disturbance, returns to her nest. She circles it once, her massive body moving with surprising grace, her head lowering to inspect the mound. For a heart-stopping moment, the raiders watching from concealment freeze, certain that she has detected the theft. But the camouflage holds. The mother settles back into her resting position, apparently satisfied that the disturbance was nothing more than the normal sounds of the forest. But something has changed. She is more alert now, her rest period effectively ended by the disturbance. Her eyes remain open, scanning constantly. Her crest moves subtly, capturing sounds from all directions. The window for easy thefts has closed. The next egg will be harder to take. The scout allows 30 minutes to pass, time for the mother's heightened alert state to gradually diminish. During this period, the raiders remain motionless, fighting the urge to move, to scratch, to adjust position. Small flying insects land on them, crawling across their fur, but they do not react. A small lizard passes within centimeters of one raider's nose, and she does not even blink. This is the discipline that keeps them alive in a world designed to kill creatures their size. As Hour 5 progresses toward Hour 6, the scout decides the time is right for the second disturbance. This one will be different, more elaborate, designed to create a longer window of opportunity. She signals to the distraction team, and a new pattern begins. This time, 2 members of the distraction team work in coordination. The first positions himself at distraction point Beta, located on the opposite side of the nesting area from the first disturbance. The second remains at a position between points Alpha and Beta, ready to create a sequence of sounds that will suggest multiple threats approaching from different directions. The sequence begins with a sharp crack, the sound of a branch breaking under significant weight. This is accomplished by one of the raiders deliberately snapping a dead piece of wood, the sound echoing across the valley. The mother's response is immediate and powerful. She leaps to her feet, her entire body tensed for combat, a deep huffing sound emanating from her throat. Before she can fully orient to this new sound, the second distraction team member creates another disturbance at a different location. This time, a combination of movement in the undergrowth and a series of aggressive vocalizations. The effect is to create the impression of multiple small predators coordinating an attack on the nest. For the mother Parasaurolophus, this triggers her most powerful defensive instincts. She begins to use her crest as a resonating chamber, producing a series of low-frequency alarm calls that boom across the valley like organic foghorns. These calls serve multiple purposes. They might summon other members of her species if any are within hearing range. They communicate to potential predators that she is aware of their presence and prepared to fight, and they provide her with auditory information about her surroundings through the pattern of echoes. But most importantly for the raider's purposes, these vocalizations require her to remain relatively stationary, her body rigid as she produces the complex sound patterns. During these moments, her visual attention is necessarily divided, focused on multiple potential threat vectors rather than on the nest itself. The acquisition team moves. This time, 3 raiders approach the nest simultaneously, working with practiced coordination. They know exactly where the first egg was extracted and target an adjacent position. The digging is faster now, more confident, driven by the success of the first theft and the knowledge that the window of opportunity is larger this time. They encounter an unexpected complication. The second egg they locate is positioned deeper in the vegetation matrix than the first, requiring significantly more excavation. Precious seconds tick by as they dig frantically, throwing aside layers of rotting ferns and cycad fronds. The mother is still producing her alarm calls, still focused on the perimeter threats, but this cannot last forever. Finally, the egg is exposed. But now comes an even greater challenge. The position of this egg makes extraction difficult. 2 raiders must work together, one gripping the egg while the other literally pushes from behind, using her body weight to help dislodge it from the compressed vegetation. The process is awkward, noisy, and time-consuming. At the distraction points, the team members are running out of options. They have created multiple sound signatures, moved through several positions, and the mother is beginning to display behavior suggesting she is preparing to actively investigate rather than simply defend from her central position. If she moves toward any of the distraction points with determination, the raider at that location will have to flee, and the sequence will collapse. The scout makes a decision. She produces a sharp, piercing whistle, a sound unlike anything the mother has heard before, coming from yet another direction. This is the scout herself creating a distraction, abandoning her observation post to directly engage in the deception. It is a calculated risk, trading her strategic overview for tactical necessity. The whistle has the desired effect. The mother, already agitated by the multiple disturbances, interprets this new sound as confirmation that she is surrounded by threats. But rather than charge in any single direction, she adopts a defensive posture directly over her nest, her body lowered, her massive hind legs positioned to deliver devastating kicks in any direction, her tail sweeping in slow arcs that clear a defensive perimeter. This posture actually works in the raider's favor. The mother is so focused on maintaining her defensive stance that she is not inspecting the nest itself. The acquisition team, having successfully extracted the second egg, begins their retreat. But the extraction took longer than planned, and now they face a new problem. The mother's defensive tail sweeps are covering some of their planned retreat routes. One raider, gripping the egg, must make a desperate dash across open ground, passing within 3 meters of the mother's sweeping tail. The timing must be perfect. She waits, watching the pattern of the tail's movement, calculating the interval between sweeps. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Now. She runs, her small legs pumping with every ounce of strength she possesses, the egg clutched awkwardly in her jaws. Her entire world reduced to the need to cross those 3 meters before the tail completes its arc. Time seems to dilate, each microsecond stretching into eternity. She can feel the displacement of air as the massive tail passes behind her, missing her by perhaps half a meter. Then she is across, diving into the cover of the fern thicket, her heart hammering so hard it feels like it might burst from her chest. The second egg is cached. 2 successful thefts. The clan is beginning to accumulate real resources. But the cost is becoming apparent. The mother is now in a heightened state of alertness that will not easily diminish. The distraction team has exhausted many of their best strategies. The element of surprise, never truly complete, is now significantly degraded. Hour 6 arrives with the sun approaching its zenith. The heat is becoming oppressive, even for creatures adapted to this climate. The raiders are beginning to show signs of stress, their small bodies poorly equipped for sustained activity in direct sunlight at these temperatures. They need water, they need rest, but more than anything, they need to continue the raid. Turning back now with only 2 eggs would mean the mission is a partial failure. The scout reassesses the situation. The mother shows no signs of leaving her defensive position over the nest. Her alarm calls have attracted attention from other creatures in the valley. In the distance, the raiders can hear answering calls from other hadrosaurs, probably several kilometers away, but potentially moving closer. If other adults arrive at the nesting site, the raid becomes impossible. A new strategy is needed. The scout realizes that continuing with the distraction and theft pattern in its current form will yield diminishing returns. The mother has learned that the disturbances do not materialize into actual attacks. Her response curve is adapting in real time, a demonstration of hadrosaur intelligence that paleontologists will only dimly understand from studying fossilized brain cavities. The scout signals for a pause in operations. The entire raiding party withdraws to their original concealed position in the dry streambed. They need to regroup, to allow the mother's alert state to diminish, to develop a new approach for the afternoon phase of the raid. As they retreat, one of the raiders pauses to look back at the massive Parasaurolophus female, still maintaining her defensive stance over the nest, still producing periodic alarm calls, still protecting the remaining 18 eggs with every instinct millions of years of evolution have given her. There is something almost admirable in her determination, something that transcends the simple predator-prey relationship. This is a mother defending her offspring, a behavior so fundamental that it bridges the vast evolutionary gulf between dinosaur and mammal. But admiration does not fill empty stomachs. The raider turns away and follows her companions back to the concealment of the stream. Hours 4 through 6 have yielded 2 eggs at the cost of revealing the raider's presence and escalating the mother's defensive responses. The balance of the raid has shifted. The afternoon will require different tactics, greater risks, and quite possibly direct confrontation. The temperature continues to climb. The Cretaceous sun beats down mercilessly on the valley, and somewhere in the vegetation, 19 Parasaurolophus eggs continue their development, unaware that their existence hangs in the balance of a conflict between maternal devotion and mammalian desperation. The raid continues. Midday, the theft and discovery, hours 7 to 9. The sun hangs at its zenith, a burning disk that transforms the Cretaceous Valley into a landscape of extremes. Shadows have contracted to almost nothing, pooling in tight circles beneath the few tall cycads and conifers that dot the terrain. The temperature has climbed past what would register as 40 degrees Celsius on a scale that will not be invented for another 75 million years. For the small mammalian raiders, adapted primarily for nocturnal and crepuscular activity, these conditions represent a severe physiological challenge. In their concealed position within the dry streambed, the raiding party has spent the past 20 minutes engaged in what can only be described as strategic consultation. The scout has called together the senior members of the group, and through a complex exchange of scent signals, postures, and soft vocalizations, they are attempting to solve a fundamental problem: how to continue the raid when their primary strategy has been compromised. The Parasaurolophus mother has remained in her heightened defensive state far longer than anticipated. Nearly an hour has passed since the last disturbance, yet she continues to maintain vigilant watch over her nest, her massive head turning slowly to scan the entire perimeter, her body positioned to respond instantly to any threat. Her alarm calls have diminished in frequency, but not ceased entirely. Every 10 to 15 minutes, she produces another resonating blast from her distinctive crest, a sound that travels across the valley and elicits distant responses from other members of her species. This is the problem. Those distant responses are getting closer. What began as faint calls from kilometers away have gradually increased in volume and clarity. At least 2 other adult Parasaurolophus are moving in this direction, drawn by the distress signals of a nesting female. If they arrive at the nesting site, the dynamics will change catastrophically. The raiders will face not one 3-ton hadrosaur, but potentially 3, with overlapping fields of vision and coordinated defensive responses. The timeline has compressed. What was planned as a leisurely 12-hour operation, taking eggs gradually throughout the day, must now be accelerated. The scout makes the decision. They will attempt to take 4 eggs in rapid succession during the next hour, accepting significantly higher risks in exchange for higher rewards. If successful, they will have 6 eggs total, enough to justify ending the raid early and retreating before the other hadrosaurs arrive. If unsuccessful, they risk losing everything. Hour 7 begins with a fundamental change in tactics. Rather than attempting to draw the mother away from the nest through perimeter disturbances, the raiders will create a concentrated threat from a single direction, something so compelling that she has no choice but to leave the immediate vicinity of her eggs to investigate and neutralize it. The distraction team, now working as a coordinated unit, positions itself at a carefully chosen location approximately 40 meters from the nest. This spot offers them good cover for retreat, but more importantly, it is separated from the nest by a small rise in the terrain, a barely perceptible elevation change of perhaps 2 meters. If the mother commits to investigating this location, she will have to move beyond that rise, which will place the nest briefly out of her direct line of sight. They begin with movement. Not subtle rustling, but obvious, deliberate motion in the undergrowth. Multiple raiders moving simultaneously, creating a pattern that suggests a pack of small predators coordinating an approach. In the Cretaceous ecosystem, such behavior is genuinely threatening. Pack-hunting Dromaeosaurus are known to target hadrosaur nests, and while 4 mammals the size of house cats are nowhere near as dangerous as a pack of meter-long feathered theropods, the behavioral signature is similar enough to trigger the mother's defensive programming. The mother's response is immediate and powerful. She rises to her full height, her body language shifting from defensive alertness to active aggression. She takes several steps toward the disturbance, her massive feet creating tremors that the raiders can feel even from their distant position. She lowers her head, using her duck-like bill to tear through low vegetation, clearing her sight lines toward the perceived threat. But she does not commit fully. Some instinct, some deep maternal programming, keeps her from moving too far from her nest. She advances perhaps 10 meters, then stops, turning her head to check on the nest before advancing further. This partial commitment is not enough for the raiders' purposes. They need her to move beyond that rise, to lose direct visual contact with the eggs for at least 30 to 40 seconds. The distraction team escalates. One raider breaks from cover entirely, showing herself in a small clearing perhaps 30 meters from the mother. This is extraordinarily dangerous. A direct sighting transforms the situation from ambiguous threat to confirmed predator. The raider knows she has perhaps 3 seconds before the mother either charges or produces an alarm call that will bring every large animal within a kilometer radius to investigate. She uses those 3 seconds to create maximum provocation. She stands on her hind legs, making herself appear larger, and produces a series of aggressive, chattering vocalizations. Then she drops back to all fours and darts sideways, disappearing into dense vegetation, but maintaining enough noise to create a clear trail for the mother to follow. The effect is exactly what the raiders need. The Parasaurolophus mother, confronted with a visible predator near her nest, makes the decision to actively pursue rather than simply defend. She moves forward with surprising speed, her bulk creating a path through the vegetation as effectively as a bulldozer. She crests the small rise in the terrain, and for approximately 35 seconds, the nest drops out of her direct visual range. The acquisition team is already moving. They have been positioned for this moment, waiting in a state of coiled readiness just beyond the mother's previous detection range. Now they sprint toward the nest with every ounce of speed their small bodies can generate. 5 raiders converge on the vegetation mound from multiple directions, each targeting a different section. They dig frantically, their small claws moving in a blur of motion that tears through the outer layers of the nest with practiced efficiency. The first raider locates an egg within 8 seconds and begins extraction immediately. The second finds her target in 11 seconds. The third encounters difficulty, finding only compressed vegetation where she expected an egg, forcing her to redirect to a different area of the nest. Meanwhile, beyond the rise, the distraction raider is engaged in a desperate game of evasion. The mother Parasaurolophus is actively hunting her now, moving through the vegetation with single-minded determination, using her bulk and strength to simply push through obstacles that would stop most creatures. The raider must stay visible enough to maintain the mother's interest, but not so exposed that she can be caught. She darts between fallen logs, uses cycad trunks as cover, creates false trails by doubling back on her own path. But she is tiring. The heat, the stress, the sheer physical effort of this high-speed evasion is taking its toll. Her movements are becoming fractionally slower, her decision-making slightly less crisp. She has perhaps another 30 seconds before exhaustion forces her to either find a defensible hiding spot or risk being trampled. At the nest, 3 eggs have been successfully extracted. The raiders begin their retreat, each gripping an egg that represents nearly a quarter of their own body weight. But the third raider, the one who encountered difficulty, has made a critical decision. Rather than retreat with the others, she continues to dig, determined to secure a 4th egg. This is both admirable dedication and potentially fatal stubbornness. she finds an egg. It is positioned deep in the nest, requiring her to actually burrow into the vegetation mound to reach it. She disappears from view, surrounded by rotting plant matter, working entirely by touch and scent. The heat inside the nest is intense, the product of bacterial decomposition generating temperatures that could cause hyperthermia in a small mammal within minutes. The scout, watching from her restored observation position, sees the danger developing. The distraction raider is reaching the end of her endurance. The mother will soon either catch her or give up the chase and return to the nest. The 3 raiders with eggs are still exposed, not yet reaching the safety of cover. And 1 raider is buried in the nest itself, vulnerable and unaware of the approaching. The scout makes a split-second decision that demonstrates the kind of complex cognition that will eventually lead to her species' evolutionary descendants becoming the dominant intelligence on the planet. She produces a specific vocalization, a sharp triple chirp that every member of the raiding party recognizes instantly. It is the emergency recall signal, the command to abort current actions and retreat immediately. The effect is instantaneous. The distraction raider, hearing the signal even over the thundering approach of the mother Parasaurolophus, breaks off her evasion pattern and dives into a crevice between 2 rocks, a space too small for the mother to access. The 3 raiders carrying eggs accelerate their retreat, abandoning any pretense of stealth in favor of pure speed. And the raider buried in the nest, despite not having fully extracted the egg she has located, releases it and begins to withdraw. But she is too slow. As she emerges from the vegetation mound, dirt and decaying plant matter clinging to her fur, the mother Parasaurolophus crests the rise and returns to her nest. For a frozen moment that seems to stretch across geological time, predator and protector stare at each other across a distance of perhaps 5 meters. The mother sees the small mammal emerging from her nest. She sees the disturbed vegetation, and in that moment of recognition, something changes in her behavior. The alarm calls she has been producing periodically now become a continuous, ear-splitting barrage of sound. These are not simple defensive vocalizations. These are distress calls of maximum intensity, the hadrosaur equivalent of screaming for help. The raider does the only thing she can. She runs. Not toward any predetermined retreat route, not following any planned escape path, but simply away, in whatever direction offers the clearest path. The mother pursues, but now her pursuit is different. She is not attempting to catch the fleeing. Instead, she is driving it away from the nest, using her bulk and aggression to establish a protective perimeter. The raider manages to reach cover, disappearing into a tangle of primitive shrubs. The mother does not follow. Instead, she returns to her nest and begins a thorough inspection, using her snout to probe through the vegetation, her superior size and strength allowing her to rearrange the mound in ways the raiders never could. And she discovers the truth. Multiple eggs are missing. The careful camouflage the raiders employed after the first 2 thefts is now irrelevant, because the mother is conducting a complete investigation. She can sense, through means the raiders can only dimly understand, that her clutch has been significantly depleted. Where there should be 20 eggs, she finds perhaps 15 or 16, with clear evidence of disturbance in multiple locations. Her response is primal and terrible. The alarm calls increase in intensity and frequency. She begins to pace around the nest in tight circles, her massive feet creating a barrier of churned earth. She uses her tail to sweep the surrounding area, knocking down vegetation, creating clear sight lines in every direction. This is no longer a mother at rest, periodically vigilant. This is a mother who knows her offspring are under active attack. From their various retreat positions, the raiding party observes this transformation with something approaching despair. The operational conditions have changed fundamentally. The mother will not relax her guard now. She will not fall into predictable patterns. She has learned, adapted, escalated her defensive responses to match the confirmed threat. But worse is coming. The distant calls that have been gradually increasing in volume throughout the morning suddenly become much closer. 2 adult Parasaurolophus, a male and another female, emerge from the forest to the north. They have been traveling for over an hour, drawn by the distress calls, and they arrive at the nesting site with their own protective instincts fully activated. The dynamics have changed catastrophically. 3 adult hadrosaurs now occupy the nesting area, their combined mass representing nearly 9 tons of muscle, bone, and maternal aggression. They communicate with each other through complex crest vocalizations, a conversation the raiders cannot possibly interpret, but whose emotional content is unmistakable. The new arrivals are supporting the nesting female, positioning themselves to create overlapping fields of vision, establishing a defensive formation that would not seem out of place in a military engagement. Hour 8 has brought the raid to a crisis point. The raiders have secured 3 eggs during the frenzied theft, giving them 5 total, but they have lost the element of surprise, escalated the mother's defensive responses to maximum intensity, and triggered the arrival of reinforcements that make further theft attempts appear suicidal. The scout calls for a complete withdrawal to the primary rally point, a location nearly 200 meters from the nest that they identified during the initial planning phase. The entire raiding party, scattered across the operational area by the chaotic events of the past hour, begins to converge on this location, moving with extreme caution to avoid detection by the now hypersensitive hadrosaurs. The rally point is a natural cavity beneath a fallen conifer trunk, offering both concealment and multiple escape routes. As the raiders gather, the scout conducts a head count. All 12 members of the raiding party are present and uninjured, though several show signs of heat stress and exhaustion. The distraction raider, who was nearly caught, is panting heavily, her small body struggling to dissipate the accumulated heat from her exertions. They have 5 eggs cached at various locations along their retreat. 5 eggs represent a significant success by any objective measure. Each egg contains enough protein and fat to feed the entire clan for a full day. 5 eggs could sustain them for nearly a week, buying crucial time for other food sources to become available. But the original plan called for 6 to 8 eggs. More importantly, the presence of 3 adult Parasaurolophus at the nesting site means that attempting to retrieve the cached eggs has become significantly more dangerous. The raiders cached the eggs at locations they believed would be outside the hadrosaur's active patrolling range, but that calculation was based on a single defensive mother, not a coordinated group. Hour 9 arrives with the situation seemingly stalemated. The raiders have their cached eggs, but cannot safely retrieve them. The hadrosaurs have established a defensive perimeter that makes further theft attempts impossible. The temperature continues to climb, adding urgency to the need for resolution. The raiders cannot remain exposed to this heat indefinitely, and the cached eggs, sitting in their hiding spots without the temperature regulation of the nest mound, will begin to deteriorate if not moved soon. The scout faces the most difficult decision of the entire operation. Does she order a complete withdrawal, abandoning the attempt to retrieve the cached eggs and settling for whatever eggs they can carry immediately? Does she attempt a bold strike to retrieve some or all of the cached eggs, accepting catastrophic risk for potentially higher reward? Or does she wait, hoping that the two newly arrived hadrosaurs will eventually leave, reducing the defensive perimeter back to manageable levels? As she wrestles with this decision, something unexpected happens. The male Parasaurolophus, having assessed the situation at the nesting site, begins to move away. His behavior suggests he has determined that the immediate threat has passed and his presence is no longer required. Male hadrosaurs, while capable of defensive behavior, do not have the same deep maternal programming as nesting females. His instinct is to return to his feeding territory, leaving the females to manage nest defense. This changes the calculation. Two females are still daunting, but it is not the impenetrable three-dinosaur formation of moments before. The scout sees a narrow window of opportunity opening. If the male continues his departure, if the second female can be convinced to leave as well, then conditions might return to something approaching the morning's operational parameters. But time is working against them. The sun has passed its zenith and begun its afternoon descent. In 4 hours, it will begin to set. The raiders have spent 9 of their 12 allocated hours and secured only 5 eggs, still below their minimum target. More critically, the clan back at the burrow has been without food for nearly 4 full days. The young are starving. Every hour the raiding party spends in the field is another hour their offspring go without nutrition. The scout makes her decision. They will wait 1 more hour, observing the hadrosaur's behavior, looking for any opportunity to retrieve the cached eggs or potentially steal 1 or 2 more. If no opportunity presents itself by the end of hour 10, they will conduct an emergency retrieval of whatever cached eggs they can safely reach and then withdraw completely, ending the raid with whatever they have managed to secure. It is a compromise born of necessity, balancing ambition against reality, hope against probability. The raiding party settles into position for another period of observation and waiting, their small bodies pressed against the cool earth beneath the fallen trunk, their eyes fixed on the distant nesting site where 3 Parasaurolophus eggs remain cached and tantalizingly out of reach. The mother Parasaurolophus continues her vigil, but her behavior She no longer simply rests beside the nest. She actively patrols, moving in irregular patterns that make prediction difficult. She stops frequently to probe the surrounding vegetation with her snout, searching for any sign of the creatures that violated her nest. Her crest continues to produce periodic calls, maintaining contact with the second female, who has positioned herself approximately 20 meters away, creating a 2-point defensive network. The raiders watch and wait. The Cretaceous sun beats down mercilessly. Somewhere in the distance, a large theropod produces a hunting roar that echoes across the valley. Life in the age of dinosaurs continues its eternal dance of predation and survival, a dance that will continue for another 10 million years until a rock from space ends this entire world in fire and darkness. But that cataclysm is still far in the future. For now, there is only this moment, this valley, this nest, these eggs, and the ancient conflict between hunger and maternal protection, playing out on a scale both intimate and epic. The raid has entered its critical final phase. The next 3 hours will determine success or failure, survival or starvation, life or death, for a clan of small mammals whose evolutionary descendants will one day inherit the Earth. Sunset. The chase and escape. Hours 10 to 12. The sun has begun its descent toward the western mountains, transforming the quality of light in the valley from the harsh white glare of midday to the warmer, more golden tones of late afternoon. It is hour 10 of the 12-hour mission, and the dynamics are about to shift one final time. The scout has been watching the hadrosaurs for the past 40 minutes, analyzing their behavioral patterns with an intensity born of desperation, searching for any weakness, any opportunity, any chance to complete the mission and escape with their lives. What she observes gives her a slender thread. The second female Parasaurolophus, the one who arrived as reinforcement during the crisis of discovery, is showing clear signs of restlessness. She paces back and forth along her section of the defensive perimeter, occasionally producing questioning calls toward the nesting mother. Her body language suggests conflict between her instinct to support another female's nest defense and her own biological needs. She has not eaten or drunk water for over 2 hours, having traveled from wherever her own territory lies to respond to the distress calls. The nesting mother, by contrast, remains absolutely committed to her defensive stance. If anything, her vigilance has intensified. She has rearranged the vegetation mound multiple times, using her massive strength to restructure the nest in ways that make unauthorized entry nearly impossible. The remaining eggs, now numbering somewhere between 15 and 16, are buried deeper and protected by a more substantial barrier of compressed plant matter. She has learned from the morning's thefts and adapted her nest architecture accordingly. But even the most dedicated mother has physical limitations. The scout notices that the nesting female's movements are becoming slightly less crisp, her reaction times fractionally slower. She has now been guarding this nest for 44 consecutive days with minimal food intake and almost no sleep. The raids of the past 9 hours have pushed her already strained reserves to their absolute limit. Her body is beginning to betray her will. The scout makes a series of calculations that represent the absolute peak of her cognitive abilities. She considers the position of the cached eggs, the behavior patterns of both hadrosaurs, the declining angle of the sun creating shifting shadow patterns, the distance to the primary burrow, and the carrying capacity of her raiding party. She develops a plan that is audacious to the point of madness, a plan that accepts catastrophic risk because the alternative is certain starvation for the clan. They will attempt to retrieve all 5 cached eggs simultaneously, while also making one final theft from the nest itself. The operation will require splitting the raiding party into multiple teams operating in perfect coordination, executing a complex sequence of actions with split-second timing, and then conducting a fighting retreat across 200 meters of open territory, while carrying burdens that severely compromise their mobility. She communicates this plan to the raiding party through the most complex series of signals she has ever attempted. The other raiders receive this information with visible apprehension, but they also understand the mathematics of survival. 5 eggs are good. 6 eggs are the difference between hunger and genuine sustenance. The risk is enormous, but so is the potential reward. The plan has multiple phases that must execute in rapid succession. Phase 1. Create a distraction significant enough to draw both hadrosaurs toward the northern perimeter of the nesting area, away from both the nest and the cached egg locations. Phase 2. 3 small teams simultaneously retrieve the cached eggs, while the acquisition team makes one final assault on the nest itself. Phase 3. Coordinate a retreat that uses the terrain and available cover to maximum advantage, while the distraction team conducts a fighting withdrawal to prevent the hadrosaurs from organizing an effective pursuit. Hour 10 transitions into Hour 11 as the raiders move into their final positions. The distraction team, now reduced to just 2 members after the exertions of the day, positions itself at the farthest point north they dare approach. These 2 raiders, both veterans of previous nesting season raids, understand that what they are about to do represents the most dangerous assignment of the entire mission. They will need to create a disturbance so compelling that both hadrosaurs commit to investigating it. But they will also need to survive the inevitable counterattack and buy enough time for the other teams to complete their tasks. They begin with fire. Not actual combustion, which is beyond the capabilities of Cretaceous mammals, but the next best thing: chemical warfare. Both raiders have full scent glands, structures that produce pungent chemical secretions used for territorial marking and predator deterrence. They deliberately void these glands in a concentrated area, creating an olfactory signature that is genuinely alarming to hadrosaurs. The smell is sharp, acrid, reminiscent of the chemical defenses employed by some of the more dangerous predators in this ecosystem. The effect on the hadrosaurs is immediate. Both females orient toward the scent source, their bodies tensing, their alarm calls intensifying. The nesting mother takes several steps away from her nest, her maternal programming briefly overridden by the perceived threat of a major predator in close proximity. The second female moves even more decisively, advancing toward the scent source with her head lowered in a clear threat display. This is the signal the other teams have been waiting for. 3 pairs of raiders break from cover simultaneously, each pair racing toward one of the cached egg locations. The timing is critical. They have perhaps 60 seconds before one or both hadrosaurs recognize that the scent is not attached to an actual large predator and return to defensive positions. The first pair reaches their cached egg without incident, a relatively easy retrieval from a hollow beneath a fallen log. The second pair encounters complications when they discover that a small monitor lizard has found their cached egg and is attempting to break through the shell. A brief but vicious confrontation ensues, the raiders driving off the lizard with aggressive displays and actual physical attacks, biting and scratching until the reptile retreats. The egg shows minor damage to the shell, but remains viable. The third pair faces the worst challenge. Their cached egg was hidden in a crevice between rocks, and in the hours since it was placed there, the weight of the egg has caused it to settle deeper into the crevice. They dig frantically, trying to create enough space to extract the egg without cracking it. Precious seconds evaporate as they work, their small claws scraping against stone, their breathing rapid and desperate. Meanwhile, the acquisition team, consisting of the scout herself and one other highly experienced raider, is approaching the nest. This is the most audacious part of the plan, the element that transforms a retrieval operation into a genuine heist. With both hadrosaurs focused on the northern disturbance and the nest temporarily unguarded, they have a window of perhaps 45 seconds to steal one more egg. They reach the nest and immediately see the problem. The mother's restructuring has created a vegetation mound that is significantly more compact and defensible than it was this morning. The eggs are buried deeper, protected by layers of tightly compressed plant matter that will take time to excavate. But they committed to this action, and retreat now gains them nothing. The scout begins to dig with a ferocity that would seem impossible for a creature her size. Her claws tear through the outer layer of vegetation, flinging material aside in a spray of decomposing matter. Her companion joins her, and together they excavate with the desperate energy of creatures who understand that every second counts. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. They hit resistance. The egg is there, they can feel it, but it is wedged between other eggs and compressed vegetation in a way that makes extraction difficult. The scout makes a decision that demonstrates why she has survived to lead raiding operations. Rather than waste time trying to extract this particular egg cleanly, she uses her teeth and claws to create leverage, actually cracking the shell slightly to get enough grip to pull it free. A small amount of fluid leaks from the crack, but the egg remains largely intact and viable. They have the egg. But now comes the truly dangerous part. The 45-second window has closed. The hadrosaurs have investigated the scent disturbance, found no actual predator, and are beginning to return to defensive positions. The nesting mother, in particular, is moving back toward her nest with accelerating speed, her exhaustion temporarily forgotten in the face of new evidence of violation. The scout and her companion begin their retreat, gripping the damaged egg between them, moving as fast as the awkward burden allows. They have perhaps 15 meters to cover before reaching meaningful cover, 15 meters of open ground where they are completely exposed and vulnerable. The mother Parasaurolophus crests a small rise and sees them. The sound she produces is unlike anything the raiders have heard from her before. It is not an alarm call or a threat display. It is pure rage, a vocalization that seems to combine every protective instinct evolution has given her into a single expression of maternal fury. She charges. 3 tons of dinosaur moving at full speed create a ground-shaking impact with each footfall. The scout and her companion run, but they are burdened by the egg and cannot achieve their maximum speed. The distance closes. 10 meters, 8 meters, 6 meters. The mother's shadow falls across them, her massive bulk blocking the late afternoon. The distraction team, seeing the crisis developing, launches their final gambit. Both raiders break from their positions and sprint directly across the mother's path, passing within 2 meters of her front feet, creating a moving disturbance that triggers her predator response reflexes. For a critical 2 seconds, her attention divides between the fleeing egg thieves and these new targets that have presented themselves as immediate threats. Those 2 seconds are enough. The scout and her companion reach cover, diving into a dense thicket of primitive shrubs. The mother pursues to the edge of the thicket, but cannot follow into the dense vegetation without risking injury to her own bulk. She stands at the perimeter, producing continuous alarm calls, using her tail to thrash the vegetation in rage and frustration. But the distraction team raiders are now in mortal danger themselves. Having deliberately drawn the mother's attention, they are now the targets of her fury. They run, splitting up to divide her focus, using every technique they know for evasion and misdirection. One raider manages to reach the safety of a rock formation with crevices too small for the hadrosaur to access. The other is not so fortunate. The mother's charge catches him in open ground. He attempts a last-second dodge, throwing himself sideways, but the mass differential is too great. The mother's front foot, each toe equipped with a substantial claw, comes down in a crushing stomp that impacts the ground within centimeters of the raider's body. The shockwave alone is enough to stun him, sending him tumbling across the ground, disoriented and vulnerable. But the hadrosaur is not a dedicated predator. She does not follow up with a killing bite or another stomp. Her programming is defensive, not offensive. Having neutralized what she perceives as a threat, having driven the egg thieves from her nest, her instinct is to return and assess the damage rather than pursue revenge. She turns away from the stunned raider and moves back toward her nest. The stunned raider recovers consciousness after perhaps 10 seconds, his small brain rattled but functional. He staggers to his feet and limps toward cover, his right hind leg showing signs of injury but still functional. He has survived what should have been a fatal encounter, saved by the mother's protective rather than predatory instincts. Now comes the most critical phase of the entire operation, the retreat. The raiders have secured 6 eggs total, exceeding their minimum target, but these eggs are scattered across multiple cache points and carried by multiple pairs of raiders. They need to consolidate, establish a convoy formation, and traverse 200 meters of dangerous territory back to their primary burrow, while carrying burdens that reduce their speed and mobility by at least 50%. The second female Parasaurolophus, witnessing the chaos at the nesting site, finally makes her decision. This is not her nest, not her offspring, and her own biological needs can no longer be ignored. She begins to withdraw, moving back toward the north, producing calls that sound almost apologetic as she abandons her defensive position. The nesting mother is now alone again, but her state of agitation is at maximum intensity. Hour 11 becomes hour 12. The sun approaches the horizon, creating long shadows that transform the valley into a landscape of dramatic contrasts, areas of deep shade alternating with patches of golden light. The raiders, having consolidated their positions and organized their egg transport teams, begin the long journey home. They move in a formation that represents the accumulated wisdom of countless generations of mammalian survival strategy. The 3 egg-carrying pairs form the center of the formation, each pair coordinating their movements to balance the weight and prevent dropping their precious burden. The remaining raiders form a protective screen around them, positioned to detect threats and provide warning. The scout, despite her own exhaustion, takes the forward point position, using her superior experience to navigate the safest route. The return journey is agonizingly slow. What took 40 minutes to traverse during the morning reconnaissance now requires nearly 90 minutes while burdened with eggs. Every few hundred meters, the egg-carrying teams must pause to rest, their small muscles cramping from the sustained effort. During these pauses, the protective screen spreads out, maintaining vigilance while the carriers recover. They encounter obstacles. A small stream that was barely an impediment this morning becomes a significant challenge when crossing while carrying eggs. The water is shallow, but the stream bed is slippery with algae, and the current is strong enough to destabilize a small mammal. They solve this problem through cooperation, with non-carrying raiders creating a living bridge, bracing themselves in the current, while the egg carriers use their bodies as stable platforms for crossing. Behind them, perhaps 500 meters distant now, the Parasaurolophus mother has returned to her nest and conducted a thorough inventory. She has confirmed that 6 eggs are missing from her original clutch of 20. Her response is to restructure the nest yet again, this time creating an almost fortress-like mound, and to settle into a defensive posture that suggests she will not move from this spot for any reason short of her own physical collapse. The distant calls that have been echoing across the valley throughout the day have ceased. The emergency is over. The thieves have escaped. The mother can only protect what remains. As the raiders climb the slope toward their burrow, the sun touches the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that will not be witnessed by human eyes for another 75 million years. The temperature begins to drop, providing welcome relief from the oppressive heat of the day. The nocturnal creatures of the Cretaceous are beginning to emerge, creating a symphony of chirps, calls, and rustlings that herald the coming night. The burrow entrance is a small opening beneath a limestone outcrop, carefully concealed and defensible against most predators. As the raiding party approaches, they are greeted by the waiting members of the clan, the females who remained behind to guard the young and maintain the nest. The reunion is brief but emotionally significant, a series of scent exchanges and physical contacts that reinforce social bonds and communicate the success of the mission. The eggs are brought into the burrow one at a time, each one inspected and positioned in the communal food cache. 6 Parasaurolophus eggs, each containing enough nutrition to sustain the entire clan for a day. 6 eggs representing the difference between survival and extinction for this small mammalian lineage. The slightly damaged egg, the one the scout cracked during the final theft, is designated for immediate consumption. Its compromised shell means it will not keep as long as the others. The young, having gone nearly 4 days without substantial food, are brought to the damaged egg first. What follows is a feeding frenzy that is simultaneously brutal and beautiful. Multiple young attach themselves to the cracked shell, using their small teeth to tear through the protective membrane and access the protein-rich contents. The fluid inside the egg, a complex mixture of yolk, albumin, and developing embryonic tissue, represents perfect nutrition for growing mammals. The adults feed as well, but they are more measured, more strategic. They understand that these 6 eggs must last as long as possible, that rationing and preservation are as important as immediate satisfaction. The scout, despite her exhaustion and her own hunger, does not feed until every other member of the clan has taken their share. This is leadership in its most primal form, the alpha female subordinating her immediate needs to the welfare of the group. As full darkness falls, the clan settles into the burrow for the night. Bodies press together for warmth and security. The day's exertions catch up with them, and sleep comes quickly for most. But the scout remains awake for a while longer, her mind processing the events of the past 12 hours, encoding the lessons learned into neural pathways that will inform future raids. She has learned that Parasaurolophus mothers can adapt their defensive strategies in real time, that they can summon reinforcements through vocal communication, that they will protect their nests with a determination that borders on suicidal. She has learned the precise timing windows for theft, the optimal distraction techniques, the importance of contingency planning. This knowledge will be passed on, not through language or written record, but through demonstration and observation, the mammalian method of cultural transmission. Outside the burrow, the Cretaceous night unfolds in all its terrible beauty. Somewhere in the darkness, a tyrannosaur produces a hunting roar that echoes for kilometers. Smaller predators move through the undergrowth, pursuing their own desperate quests for survival. The river continues its eternal flow, carrying the detritus of countless lives toward an ancient sea. And in the valley, the Parasaurolophus mother maintains her vigil over her remaining 14 eggs. She has lost 6 offspring to the mammalian thieves, but she has saved 14. From her perspective, this is success, a victory won through endurance and maternal devotion. Those 14 eggs will eventually hatch, and the young hadrosaurs will emerge into a world that is already counting down to its own extinction, though they cannot possibly know this. The Scouts clan has also succeeded. 6 eggs stolen over 12 hours of planning, distraction, theft, discovery, and desperate escape. 12 hours that represent an epic compressed into a single day, a battle between different evolutionary strategies, different approaches to survival, different ways of being alive in a world that cares nothing for sentiment or fairness. In 75 million years, paleontologists will find fossils of Parasaurolophus in what was once this valley. They will study the bone structure, measure the cranial crest, develop theories about vocalization and social behavior. They will find fossilized nests with eggs, evidence of parental care that rivals modern birds. They will understand much about these magnificent creatures. But they will never find evidence of this raid. The small mammals who stole the eggs will leave almost no fossil record, their tiny bones too fragile to survive the crushing weight of geological time. The conflict between raider and protector will vanish without trace, erased by 75 million years of erosion, sedimentation, and tectonic activity. Yet in some deep sense, this raid represents a turning point in the story of life on Earth. These small mammals, with their large brains relative to body size, their social cooperation, their ability to plan and execute complex strategies, represent the future. They are the ancestors of countless lineages that will eventually dominate the post-dinosaur world. Every primate, every rodent, every bat and whale and elephant and human carries within their genetic code the legacy of raids like this one, desperate gambles for survival that paid off just often enough to keep the lineage alive. The 12 hours are over. The raid is complete. The clan is fed. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new dangers, new desperate struggles for survival. But tonight, in a small burrow beneath a limestone outcrop in what will one day be called Montana, a group of mammals the size of house cats sleep with full bellies, dreaming whatever dreams their simple nervous systems can produce, victorious in a battle that no one will remember, but that changed the course of evolutionary history in ways large and small. The Cretaceous night deepens. Stars appear in the sky, constellations that would be utterly unrecognizable to human astronomers, because the stars themselves have moved across 75 million years of galactic rotation. The air cools. The nocturnal hunters continue their eternal work. And life, in all its terrible beauty and desperate struggle, continues its march through deep time toward an unknowable future. The egg raid is over. But the story of survival, the story of life finding a way against impossible odds, the story of small creatures defeating larger ones through intelligence and cooperation, that story is just beginning. The egg raid is over. But the story of survival, the story of life finding a way against impossible odds, the story of small creatures defeating larger ones through intelligence and cooperation, that story is just beginning.